Talk a little Bama. Brad Edwards on Bama in 5 minutes. Hope you're doing well. Good morning. Welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We want to welcome in a new partner to the show, Muddy Water Outdoors. Muddy Water Outdoors. Visit their website for all their super, super cool hunting gear and fishing gear. Muddy Waters Outdoors. The owner of the company, Will the Thrill. You heard of him? Will Clark. And great group. Really, really, really quality product as you get ready for, you're locking in for hunting. Well, some of you already locked in, I know. But we know what's happening here in the next few weeks and through the winter. Muddy Water Outdoors, muddywateroutdoors.com. And something that they just rolled out is this Muddy Water Ambush 180 hunting blind. And it's $100 off with promo code 180. Promo code 180. Promo code 180. The Muddy Water Ambush 180 hunting blind. muddywateroutdoors.com. Group of owners here from Mississippi, and also Will the Thrill Clark, some guy that played at Mississippi State with the San Francisco Giants, St. Louis Cardinals. And we're excited to have them on the show, muddywateroutdoors.com. If you missed it, just text us. We'll be happy to send you the link. I know some of you are driving and you're busy and you're already going through meetings and different things today, surgery, whatever, crunching numbers and all sorts of different things, teaching a class. muddywateroutdoors.com. Blake Mania with me. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. Brad Edwards here in a few minutes. Fun weekend. Just a blast. And then we'll keep on going, man. I don't have all the answers for you, and I like it. This year's a little bit different. There's a lot of unknown. Who's number one? Who's number two? I don't know what to do with 3 and 4. I was jotting mine down today, and I was like, all right, I got Georgia at 1 and Bama at 2 and Ohio State at 3. And then what am I doing? Where do I go? You know, I don't believe Iowa's in the top 4. I'm not going where Luganville went. Respect Luganville, but I'm not going with Iowa. I think Ole Miss would beat Iowa on a neutral field at least 6, if not 7 to 10 times. And I recognize that Iowa can play D, but the way the game is played today, when you put that much pressure on people on the offensive side of the football, good luck. Good luck. And I mentioned it before Luganville, which I kind of feel good about, Blake. Ohio State, they get to grow up kind of on the side because the Big Ten's not awesome anymore.
God,
not that they ever were.
They're so bad.
I know. And you know, I watched Penn State just trip all over themselves against Iowa. You're up 20-10. You lose. It's just, goodness gracious. Boy, that's a tough one for James Franklin. You know, that's a game that you got to get. You're up 20-10. You lose 23-20. You can't. I mean, they can't score. They can't score up there. They don't have the player. They don't have the offensive concepts. They're not willing to open up the game. They're still playing 1982 football, which at times you can win with. But when you see where the game is going, I don't think it's ideal to continue to play 1977 football. But whatever you want to do. Ohio State is one to keep an eye on because I know how we like to do it. Oregon beat them, they're done. Well, that's not how it works. If Bama's not done, and they are not, they could win the national title. Ohio State's not done. Now, I know they got to go to Ann Arbor. That may actually be a game this year. But when I'm trying to rank 1, 2, 3, and 4, Blake, I've got Georgia 1, and I don't think Georgia is, unbeatable. I got Bama at 2. I have Ohio State at 3. I don't know what to do. I could put I think I could put 15 teams. I mean, I could put Iowa there. I don't like that. I could put Ole Miss there. I could put any number of teams there. It's just a bunch of,
Okay, who do you have the most faith in? Oregon, Ohio State, or Alabama? They're all one-loss potential playoff teams.
Bama.
Okay, and then Ohio State, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Oregon's dead last. I would agree with that. See, I'm the same way. To me, this season shakes up. We forget because LSU ran the table dominantly outside of the one Auburn game that ended on a field goal. They dominated almost every game, start to finish, and went undefeated. Then Alabama kind of did the same thing where they just beat people by 20 points every game, it seemed like, and then ran the table start to finish. But the majority of this Saban dynasty has been done with one-loss title winners.
It has.
So
it's not
unforeseen.
We think it is, but that's a good point.
It's just the last 2 years.
And I don't know what to do with Oklahoma. I watched that game, but they had to make this miraculous comeback.
With a backup quarterback now?
Yeah.
And
now
are they starting
Caleb's
him? Is he the one now?
Oh, I would think so, but who knows? Spencer Rattler. Who knew Spencer Rattler would get benched? We're about to bring on Brad Edwards, 25 years with ESPN. He's a Bama insider, SEC insider. From here, went to Bama, spent 25 years in Bristol, Connecticut, just wrote the book Dynasty. The book on Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide under Nick Saban, coming off for them, a devastating loss to a Texas A&M Aggies team that was 0-2. 0-2. And you listen to the show. I thought they'd go 0 this weekend. And Jimbo finally gets a big win in year 4. How about that? You know, there's a lot of expectations in Starkville and Oxford. And it took Jimbo 4 years to get a big, big, big signature win. And he takes down the first assistant coach to take down the mighty Alabama Crimson Tide. And he promised it to the Houston Touchdown Club in May. And everybody got a kick out of that. And then they win. So we welcome in our friend Brad Edwards. He joins us on the Modelo guest line, Bama Insider, his new book, Dynasty, on Saban and the Alabama era. And, Brad, let's start with Saturday night in College Station. I don't think anybody saw this coming because of A&M losing to Arkansas and losing to Mississippi State. But what a game. Let's start with, what was your one big takeaway from what happened in College Station?
Yeah, it's hard to come up with one big takeaway other than the obvious, which is that this Alabama team is not nearly as good as last year's, which I think everybody already suspected coming into the year. But now they've had 2 games that they've played in a true road environment, and they have really struggled in both of them. And we're used to seeing Alabama maybe have one game like that during the season. Let's remember, I mean, for all the domination under Nick Saban, they've only gone undefeated twice, all the way through a year. Now, they've gone undefeated through SEC play a couple more times than that. But there was no reason to expect this team was going to go undefeated. But a lot of times it's like, okay, you have that one bad day, and then it's just kind of a blip on the screen. You put this alongside the Florida game, and it's like, all right, this team seems to be vulnerable anytime they're outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium for the rest of the year. And I think that's what makes you wonder, is this a team that could end up losing a couple more before it's all said and done, which, look, from the Alabama perspective, that's a horrific season if you lose 3 games. So whether it's one of those teams or whether it's more like, some of the others. I mean, remember, obviously the 2 times that they lost to Ole Miss back in 14 and 15 ended up being the only game they lost in the regular season. They kind of flipped the switch, and then they ran the table. So I think my question at this point, after watching this team, is, what we saw the other night, what we saw a few weeks earlier in Gainesville, is that an issue of ability as far as they're just not good enough to really dominate the way that we're used to seeing them? Or is it an issue of intensity where maybe it took a loss to light a fire under them, and we'll see a different level from them from this point forward? I have no idea, and I guess we'll start to learn the answer to that question on Saturday.
Well, let's hope they wait a week. They'll play in Starkville Saturday night. May not be good timing for Mike Leach and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Brad Edwards joining us on the Modelo guest line. Brad, you had mentioned for a while that you had a lot of questions about the Bama offensive line. It came back to haunt them Saturday night. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Bama offensive line is one of many issues. In fact, I would say the only group on that team that I don't have any questions about right now would be the running backs. And at this point, it's basically one guy with the bulk of the load, and that's Brian Robinson. Every other position group on that field contributed to the loss the other night, and at certain points this season has been shaky, and that even includes Bryce Young. Now, I mean, he's a first-year starter. You can't expect him to go out there and look like an All-American in his first 6 games. But in addition to having some passes dropped, which clearly were not his fault, and that points to one of a few issues with receivers, he had some opportunities to make some big plays down the field, and he missed the throws. And so you've got to look at him and say he could do better. But the offensive line, I think a lot of people, if they want to choose one thing to hang that loss on, it would be that Alabama 2 times in that game had the ball basically on the Texas A&M goal line going in and didn't try to run it in. They had the ball that was intercepted on 3rd and goal at the 1 in the first half. And then in the second half, they had, I believe it was 1st and goal at the 4, and they threw the ball 3 consecutive plays and then kicked a field goal. And it's the lack of confidence in that offensive line to be able to pick up short yardage, which has kind of been a theme of this season. They're just not as dominant as you would expect them to be, given how talented that they're supposed to be, and what we usually are seeing from Alabama offensive lines. Now, in the middle of the field, they obviously did fine. Robinson had a big day running the ball, but in close quarters down there, when everything gets compressed, they just have not done a very good job. And obviously there was a spell, especially in the second quarter of that game, where they didn't protect the quarterback very well, and he got sacked 4 times. I believe it was 4 in the first half. And so they got to do better there too. My question is that are those the best linemen they have? Are there other guys who might be able to do better that are just on the bench because they're freshmen? Or is this what they have to work with for the rest of the year? In other words, is there a personnel change? And I would ask the same question at receiver. You know, when you look at Alabama pretty much having one guy right now who can separate from defenders, they have some very highly recruited guys who are freshmen and sophomores on this team. You know, is there a change they could make in personnel, get another player or 2 into the rotation, both on the offensive line and at receiver? I don't know. I'm not out at practice, and I think if we don't see any changes this week, that tells you that Saban and the assistant coaches have seen enough to believe that the guys they have the best chance to win with, ultimately best chance to win the SEC, would be the guys that we've been watching out there for the first half of the season.
I want to hit on something else, Brad. Brad Edwards on the Modelo guest line. What A&M receivers at times were running wide open. That doesn't happen to Alabama for the most part the last 12 or 13 years. Brad?
Yeah, there seems to be a good bit of confusion. Now, we did see a lot of that last year as well. And I guess to a certain extent, you saw it the year before. Actually, go back to the national championship game against Clemson at the end of the 2018 season when they got blown out. Pretty much from that time forward, we've seen a lot of stuff out of the Alabama defense that we're not used to seeing, and so I think that is a big concern. And you just wonder, is it because offensive schemes have become so much more complex that it's confusing to everybody? And I don't know that I necessarily see that from every team every Saturday. And so it just makes you wonder, is there something about the way that Alabama is doing it that makes things too complicated, where they need to simplify things? You certainly wouldn't think it's ability. They in theory, Alabama's players on defense are as good as Georgia's. I mean, just based on recruiting rankings and everything that we kind of have to gauge talent by. And yet you look at Alabama's defense versus Georgia's defense, and one of them appears to be, I mean, I don't even know how you quantify how much better coach Georgia's defense is as far as being where they're supposed to be, and then making plays.
No
when
doubt.
they have a chance to make them. And so that's what we're not used to seeing from Alabama, it appears that they're poorly coached. Now, look, there are times when guys are in the right spot and they just don't make a play. You've got a DB who doesn't turn his head and he gets called for pass interference. You've got a guy who's in the right spot and he doesn't make a tackle. That's not on the coordinator, or it's not on the position coaches. So I think it's a little bit of both. But any way you slice it, Alabama's defense has some issues. But at the same time, let's remember this is a team that was up 42-7 on Ole Miss the week before.
Right.
So I mean, you're talking about one of the best offenses in the country. They basically held them without points until the game was already decided. But especially to be able to hold them, for what they did for the first 3 quarters of that game is pretty significant. So it shows what they're capable of doing. They just have no consistency in doing it.
All right, let me throw this out at you. Bar 2 talks about when these guys are hiring coordinators. When you're elite, act like you're elite. And a lot of times he's referencing Saban hiring Pete Golding. He says you don't have to hire Pete Golding. You're Alabama. Like Amazon, when they're going after a COO, I mean, you go get whoever you want, Brad. And he's kind of alluded to that on Georgia and Kirby on offense, okay? I mean, the bottom line is they don't have to have Pete Golding at DC. I mean, he's not elite. And they're Bama. So this is an interesting I don't know if Saban's developing this coordinator. I don't know what's going on, but it's obviously he's not an elite play caller like Kirby Smart was, bottom line, and Jeremy Pruitt.
And I do wonder if some of this might have to do with the way that Saban routinely loses coordinators to head coaching jobs. And is this an attempt on his part to maybe, like you said, develop someone who's younger, who he feels like is less likely to get snatched up by a Power 5 program, and maybe he could get a few more years out of him. Whereas if you go for the guy who's already proven, like one of the names that came up immediately after he was let go last year was Muschamp, because obviously he and Saban go way back, and you're thinking, okay, you know what, bring in Muschamp and he'll be the next. But the thing is with a guy now, look at this. Should people still be offering Muschamp head jobs? No, I mean, I wouldn't. But hey, if he goes out there and starts, leading a couple of championship defenses, is someone going to take a chance and give him another opportunity? Maybe. I don't know, but I agree. I agree with the concept, which is that you should be able to go out there and get the best available, and they certainly can afford it. And so I've got a feeling that this, whatever happens in the second half of the season is going to determine the future for Pete Golding at Alabama, because they have too much talent on that defense to have been giving up the type of things they've been giving up over the last few years. Now, that said, Saban knows he has a really good offense. He knows he doesn't have to hold teams, under 20 points to win. But you need to hold them under 40. And most of the times they've lost, it's because they couldn't do that.
Did the game tell you anything more about Jimbo? It doesn't for me, but did the game Saturday night make you think, oh my gosh, Jimbo is this, or not?
No, it didn't, because they did so many things wrong in that game. I mean, they played about as poor of a game as I can remember them playing in a long time, in that there were mistakes in every phase. Like I said, you had the missed passes by the quarterback with open receivers. You had drop passes. Like there were like 5 or 6 drop passes that killed drives. It wasn't a play that A&M made. It was Alabama doing stuff that Alabama doesn't normally do. They got no pressure on the quarterback all game long, which you have to give A&M's offensive line credit for that. But you had the blown coverages. You have all this stuff that just piled up, the kickoff return touchdown. And yet it took all of that for A&M to be able to kick a field goal in the final play of the game to break the tie and win. And I had seen some things online. And look, I mean, as you know, message board stuff, you take it with a grain of salt. But there was some stuff circulating last week that the excuse that was being used for A&M having lost the games to Arkansas and State was that they've basically been practicing for Alabama since the summer, that all their focus had been on beating Alabama. And if there's any truth to that at all, and that's what it took in order to get that win, then okay, I mean, you got one huge win, but if that is the case, we're going to see them follow it up with a couple more losses in conference play.
Right.
And going 4-4 in the SEC, even with a win over Alabama, isn't really proving a whole lot to me.
Okay, going down the stretch real quick. In the West, now that Bama has a loss, is Ole Miss the one to keep an eye on, or how do you see it?
I mean, so the thing, of course, with Ole Miss,
I mean, their defense is terrible, but
that thing is the defense is terrible, and they, especially against the run, and they can't stop the run, which means they're vulnerable against Tennessee. They're vulnerable against Auburn. Those are two right away. I would say that there's a chance they could lose because of the trouble they have stopping the run. Ole Miss would have to win out, and then if they're able to, then does Alabama lose again? I certainly don't see Alabama. Let's put it this way: the only two games I think Alabama has a chance to lose are the two on the road, which would be this weekend in Starkville. And I think you're right that it's a bad timing for State to catch them coming off. The odds of them losing back-to-back games, I would think, are incredible. But they've already had several good teams lose at Jordan-Hare. So the Auburn game is not far-fetched that Alabama could lose that. It's just a question of can Ole Miss win out. But I tell you what, that would make for a fun finish to the season if you had the Iron Bowl and the Egg Bowl being played that last weekend with Ole Miss and Alabama tied in the loss column going in. That would that's the type of drama you don't get in the SEC West very often.
No doubt. We'll leave it there. Brad Edwards' new book, Dynasty, on Saban and the Alabama football dominance in the Saban era. Dynasty is the book. He joins us on the Modelo guest line. We'll do it again soon, Brad. Appreciate it, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Bo. Take care.
All right, so fun day. I felt like that show lasted about 20 minutes, and we just did 3 hours. I feel like we could do 2 more hours. But Blake's over there shaking his head, saying, I gave you the max effort Monday, and we're going to wrap this thing up here in the next minute or so. The show is brought to you by USA Pawn, and we're going to give away a couple of tickets to the Mississippi club level tickets to the Alabama-Mississippi State game this weekend tomorrow. We'll have Nick Fulton in with USA Pawn as they celebrate their 30th anniversary. And their mega store, USA Pawn, I-55 South, McDowell Road. 6 locations, usapawn.com. usapawn.com. They buy and sell silver and gold. We'll make a Bloody Mary tomorrow morning. We'll give away some tickets. Tune in tomorrow. We'll give away 2 club-level tickets to State Bama, powered by USA Pawn. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.